الحمد لله نحينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Then to continue with Usool Al Thalatha, the three fundamental principles of Sheikh al-Islam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah, with the explanation of Sheikh Saleh-Al-Fawzan hafidhahullah. Then last time we were on the section where the Imam, the author of the Imam, Sheikh al-Islam rahimahullah, he brings evidences for the Lordship of Allah the Most High and for His right to worship, for His rububiyyah, His Lordship, and for His uluhiyyah, His right to worship. So last time he mentioned the ayah, what occurred on page 111 of the Lebanese edition and page 87 of the Egyptian print. He said, and his saying, He the Most High, Inna rabbakum Allahu alladhi khalaqa as-samawati wal arda fi sittati ayyam ثم استوى على الأرش يغشي الليل النهار يطلبه حثيثا والشمس والقمر والنجوم مسخرات بأمري ألا له الخلق والأمر تبارك الله رب العالمين. So the ayah from Surah Al-A'raf, the 7th surah, ayah 54, with the explanation, indeed your Lord is Allah who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. Then He ascended upon the throne. He causes the night to cover the day. It follows it swiftly, and the sun and the moon and the stars are subservient to His command. Certainly creation and commandment are His alone. Exalted is Allah, the Lord of the whole of creation. Then Sheikh al-Islam rahimahullah, he follows this by saying, and what occurs on page 118 of this Lebanese print, page 92 of the Egyptian print, وَالرَّبُّ هُوَ الْمَعْبُودُ وَالدَّلِيلُ قَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اعْبُدُوا رَبَّكُمُ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ الذي جعل لكم الأرض فراشا والسماء بناء وأنزل من السماء ماء فأخرج به من الثمرات رزقا لكم فلا تجعلوا لله أندادا وأنتم تعلمون. The ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah, the 2nd surah, ayah 22. So the saying of the Sheikh al-Islam, and the Lord, Ar-Rabb, is the one who is worshipped, Al-Ma'bud. And the proof is His saying, He the Most High, and he quotes the ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah with the explanation, O mankind, single out your Lord with all worship, He who created you, and those who came before you, so that you may be dutiful to Him, seeking to avoid His anger and His punishment. He who made the earth a resting place for you, and the sky a canopy, and He sent down from the clouds rain, and He brought out with it crops and fruits from the earth as provision for you. So do not set up rivals for Allah whilst you know that you have no Lord besides Him. Sheikh Al-Fawzan, hafidhahullah, he said in explanation of this ayah, or in explanation of the text here and the ayah, he's saying, in the saying of the author, he's saying, وَالرَّبُّ هُوَ الْمَعْبُودُ, and the Lord, Ar-Rabb, is the one who is worshipped, Al-Ma'bud. Meaning, He is the one who deserves to be worshipped. He is the one who deserves ibadah, worship. As for other than him, then it does not deserve worship, because it is not a Rabb, it is not a Lord. This is the intent of the speech of the Shaykh, rahimahullah, in his saying, Ar-Rabbu huwa al-Ma'bud. The Lord is the one who is worshipped. Meaning, he is the one who deserves worship. Just as a side point here, just to stress this point, because some people may misunderstand the text here. So just as Sheikh Al-Fawzan has explained here, likewise Sheikh Muhammad Aman, rahimahullah, he explained what is meant by the author here. In his saying, وَالرَّبُّ هُوَ الْمَعْبُودِ, and Ar-Rabb, the Lord, he is the one who is worshipped. Sheikh Muhammad Aman, rahimahullah, he said, the Lord, he is the one who is worshipped. This does not mean to explain Rububiyyah to mean Ubudiyyah. It's not a definition. It doesn't mean Ar-Rabb. In Arabic language, Ar-Rabb means Al-Ma'bud, means the one who is worshipped. It's a language definition. That is not what is being meant here. So he said, the Lord, it doesn't mean to explain lordship to mean worship. Rather, he intended, the Shaykh intended, and the Lord who created and nurtured, he is the one who deserves worship, because he is the Lord, the Creator. Meaning that he intended to use lordship as a proof for al-uluhiyyah, worship, as has preceded in the ayahs. Otherwise, the Lord, Ar-Rabb, its meaning is different. Or rather, he said the Lord, Ar-Rabb, its meaning is Al-Khaliq, the Creator, Al-Murabbi, the one who nurtures. Whereas Al-Ilah means Al-Ma'bud. Al-Ilah means the one who is worshipped. So it is obligatory that we distinguish between Tawheed of Lordship and Tawheed of Worship. We always use Tawheed of Lordship as a proof for Tawheed of Worship. This is what the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala intended. So Shaykh Muhammad Aman rahimahullah, he made the same point that Shaykh Al-Fawzan is making here. That this was not meant as a definition that Ar-Rabb in the Arabic language means Al-Ma'bud. No. Rather, that Ar-Rabb, the one who is the Lord, he is the one who deserves to be worshipped. That's the meaning. Then Shaykh Al-Fawzan, back to the explanation of Shaykh Al-Fawzan, Hafidhullah, he said, then also, it is not sufficient that a person just affirms Ar-Rububiyyah, Lordship. Rather, he must affirm Al-Ubudiyyah. He must affirm Allah's deserving all worship. He, the Perfect and Most High. And he must carry it out, making it purely and sincerely for him, the Perfect and Most High. So since he has affirmed that he is the Lord, Ar-Rabb, then it is binding upon him. It's binding upon the person who affirms that Allah is the Lord. It is binding upon him to affirm that he is Al-Ma'bud. He is the one who therefore deserves to be worshipped. And that others besides him do not deserve anything from worship. And the proof that worship is particular to the Lord is his saying, He the Most High, and he quotes the ayah quoted by the author here. يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون الذي جعل لكم الأرض فراشا والسماء بناء فأخرج به من الثمرات رزقا لكم يرحمك الله فلا تجعلوا لله أندادا وأنتم تعلمون. the ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah, 2nd Surah, ayah 22, again with the explanation, O mankind, single out your Lord with all worship, He who created you and those who came before you, that you may be people of taqwa, you may be dutiful to Him, seeking to avoid His anger and His punishment. He who made the earth a resting place for you, and made the sky a canopy, and who sent down from the clouds rain, and brought out with it crops and fruits from the earth, as provision for you. So do not set up rivals for Allah, whilst you know that you have no Lord besides Him. Then Sheikh Al-Fawzan, Hafidhullah, he explains the ayah part by part. So he begins, Ya ayyuhan nas, with the explanation, O mankind, O people. He said this is a call from Allah to the whole of mankind, the believers and the unbelievers. For Allah has mentioned in this surah, remember it's Surah Al-Baqarah, at the start of Surah Al-Baqarah. The Shaykh said, for Allah has mentioned in this surah, Al-Baqarah, that the people are divided into three categories. Mankind is divided into three categories. And he mentions and breaks down the three categories. The first category, Al-Mu'minun, are the believers. Those who have Iman, those who truly believe in the hidden and the unseen. And who truly believe, have Iman in the last day. And he has described them as being the ones who are al-muflihun, the successful ones, in his saying, أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَى هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 5, with the explanation, they, the believers, are upon guidance from their Lord, and they are the ones who are the successful ones. Then Sheikh Al-Fawzan mentions the second category, as described and broken down in Surah Al-Baqarah at the start. He said the second category are the kuffar, the unbelievers, the disbelievers. Those who openly display disbelief, kufr, and al-inad, obstinate rejection. He, the Most High, said, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Surah Al-Baqarah, 2nd Surah, ayah 6, with the explanation, indeed, those who obstinately disbelieve, it is the same whether you warn them or you do not warn them. They will not believe. Then Sheikh Al-Fawzan mentions the third category. So he mentioned the believers, the mu'minun. He's mentioned the second category, the kuffar, obstinate and deliberate rejectors. Then he mentioned the disbelievers, that is. Then he mentions the third category, al-munafiqun, the hypocrites. He said the hypocrites who are not with the disbelievers and they are not with the believers. مذبذبين بين ذلك لا إلى هؤلاء ولا إلى هؤلاء. Surah An-Nisa, the 4th Surah, ayah 143. The ayah description of the hypocrites, the munafiqeen, with the explanation, wavering in between, being neither fully with these nor fully with those. Sheikh Al-Fawzan said, so they are believers outwardly. I mean, they look apparently outwardly in that outward behavior, what they show to the people. He said they are outwardly believers. However, they are disbelievers inwardly. And they are worse than the disbelievers who openly display their unbelief. And therefore he sent down 10 and more ayahs with regard to them, and because of their danger. Those who pretend to be Muslims show they are Muslims outwardly, but inwardly they are disbelievers. The Shaykh said, therefore, because of their danger, he sent down 10 and odd ayahs about them. Whereas regarding the believers, he sent down just a few ayahs. And regarding the disbelievers, 2 ayahs. Obviously, all this is referring to the start of Surah Al-Baqarah. At the start of Surah Al-Baqarah, there are just a few ayahs about the believers, 2 ayahs about the disbelievers, and more than 10 ayahs about the munafiqeen because of their danger. As for the hypocrites, then he began mentioning them from his saying, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا, Surah Al-Baqarah, 2nd Surah, Ayah 8, up to his saying, يَكَادُ الْبَرْقُ يَخْطَفُ أَبْصَارَهُم, Ayah 20. From the Ayah 8, with the explanation, and from the people are those who say we believe. Up until his saying in Ayah 20 with the explanation, the lightning almost snatches their sight away. All those ayahs from Ayah 20 to Ayah 8 to Ayah 20 are about the hypocrites, munafiqeen. The Shaykh said, all of this is regarding the hypocrites because of the severity of their danger and of the foulness of their action. Then the Shaykh returns to the point he made at the start and says, and having mentioned these 3 types, he then said, Ya ayyuhan nas. After these 3 types have been mentioned in the Quran, then comes the ayah of the text here, Ayah 22, after these 3 have been mentioned. Ya ayyuhan nas. With the explanation, O mankind. Sheikh Fawzan said, this is a call to all of the types, the believers and the disbelievers and the hypocrites. The ulama, the scholars have said, the first call in the Mus'haf, the first call occurring in the written copy of the Quran is this, Ya ayyuhan nasu ubudu rabbakum. With the explanation, O mankind, worship your Lord. Then Shaykh Fawzan moves on and explains, U'budu. With the explanation, worship. He said this is fi'lu amr, this is a command. Meaning, akhlisu lahul ibadah. It means make all worship purely and sincerely for him. The same point the Shaykh has made before, it doesn't just mean worship Allah and then go along and worship whatever you like besides him as well. No. Meaning, u'budu, worship, meaning make all worship purely and sincerely for him. The Shaykh said, why? Why should this be? Because he is your Rabb, because he is your Lord. And worship is not correct except for the Rabb, except for the Lord, the perfect and most high. Then he mentioned the proof for that. And it is his saying, Alladhi khalaqakum. Alladhi khalaqakum. He who worship, he who created you. With the meaning, he who created you. Worship your Lord, he who created you. Again, as a small side point here, Imam al-Shawkani mentioned in his tafsir that when the command here occurs, that command to worship Allah, then a list of favors are mentioned. A list of favors which Allah has bestowed upon the people are mentioned. As Shawkani mentioned, that the first one being mentioned here is, the first favor is the khalq, that Allah the Most High created us. That's the first favor he mentions here, after his command to worship him. So Shawkani mentioned the reason for that. He said, the favor of creation is particularized, is mentioned in specifically. And it is mentioned as a favor upon them, because all of the other favors result and follow on from it. And it is their basis. which is such that nothing from them occur without it. And also, because the unbelievers affirm that Allah is the Creator. And here's the ayah, وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَهُمْ لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهُ. With the explanation, and if you were to ask them, the unbelievers, people of shirk, who created them, they would certainly say Allah. As Shawkani said, so he mentioned as a favor upon them that which they acknowledged, not that which they denied. Back to the explanation of Sheikh Al-Fawzan, Hafidhullah, he just explained the word u'budu, and he explained the reason is given for that. Alladhi khalaqakum, the one who created you. Then he said, وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, with the explanation, and those who came before you. He created you and those who came before you. Sheikh Al-Fawzan said, from the nations, all of them, Allah the Perfect and Most High created the angels and the jinn and mankind and all of the created beings. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you should have taqwa. With the explanation, so that you should have taqwa, so that you should be dutiful to Allah, seeking to avoid His anger and punishment. Sheikh Al-Fawzan said, meaning, if you reflect upon this, I mean what's just preceded, if you reflect upon it, then it should lead to this, that you will then have taqwa. So then perhaps this will result for you in taqwa, in dutifulness to Allah, if you reflect that He is the one who created you and created those who were before you. Perhaps you will seek then to protect yourselves from Him, He the Perfect and Most High, in worshipping Him, because nothing can protect from His punishment except obedience to Him, He the Perfect and Most High. Perhaps you will seek to protect yourselves from His punishment and seek to protect yourselves from the fire, because nothing will protect from it except for the worship of your Lord, who created you and those who came before you. And then he continued the mention of evidence for His Lordship and His right to worship, He the Perfect and Most High, with His saying, جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا. With the explanation, he who made for you the earth as a resting place. Sheikh Al-Fawzan said, meaning a carpet, like a carpet. وَاللَّهُ جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ بِسَاطًا. Surah Nuh, the 71st Surah, Ayah 19. With the explanation, and Allah has made the earth as a carpet laid out for you. Sheikh Al-Fawzan said, meaning laid out. And firasha, literally as a carpet, meaning which you use as a carpet. You sleep upon it, and you build upon it, and you cultivate crops upon its surface, and you travel about upon it on your journeys to wherever you want to go. So the earth is a carpet and a resting place. وَالْأَرْضَ فَرَشْنَاهَا فَنِعْمَ الْمَاهِدُونَ. Surah Al-Dhariyat, the 51st Surah, Ayah 48. With the explanation, and we have laid out the earth as a carpet for you, and what an excellent spreader of it we are. Sheikh Fawzan said, for your welfare. I mean, this has been done for your welfare. And just a side point, then farasha, in Arabic, the word farasha means to spread out. He spread it out, something which is spread out. And firash is something which is spread out upon the ground, and then is sat upon, or you lie upon it, or tread upon it. But it's something which is laid upon the ground. Then Sheikh Al-Fawzan continued, وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً, and the sky as a canopy, and the sky as a ceiling. Sheikh Al-Fawzan said, so the sky is a ceiling. The sky is a ceiling for the earth. And it contains things which result in the welfare of the servants. وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Continuation of the ayah with the explanation, and he sent down from the sky, from the clouds in the sky, rainwater, and he brought out with it crops and fruits from the earth as provision for you. So do not set up rivals for Allah whilst you know that there is no Lord besides Him. Then Shaykh Fawzan, Hafidhullah, he brings a small heading here, أنواع الإبادة التي أمر الله بها وأدلة كل نوع. The types of the worship which Allah has commanded, and the proof for each type. Then he brings a continuation of the speech of the author, Shaykh al-Islam. قال ابن كثير رحمه الله تعالى الخالق لهذه الأشياء هو المستحق للعبادة وأنواع العبادة التي أمر الله بها مثل الإسلام والإيمان والإحسان. He said, Ibn Kathir rahimahullah ta'ala, may Allah the Most High have mercy upon him, said, the creator of these things, he is the one who deserves worship. And all the types of worship which Allah has commanded, such as Al-Islam and Al-Iman and Al-Ihsan. Shaykh Al-Fawzan, Hafidhullah, he commented upon this by saying, the Shaykh, having explained that the Lord, He is the one who deserves to be worshipped, and having used his saying, He the Most High, Ya ayyuhan nasu ubudu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum walladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun, the ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah, having used it as a proof for this, then he used as evidence the speech of Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, in his explanation, his tafsir of the ayah. And he wanted to make clear the types of ibadah, the types of worship, and the proofs for each type. The ayah commands with ibadah, with worship. So then he wanted to explain what is worship, what are its types, and the proofs for each type. So al-ibadah, worship, and Shaykh Al-Fawzan here, he brings the definition of ibadah, worship. He said, so al-ibadah, worship, in the language, ibadah, it means at-tadallul wal-khudu'. It means humbling oneself and submission. And from it is the saying, tariqun mu'abbad. You can say in the language about a road, it is a road which is mu'abbad, a well-trodden road, meaning trodden down through being walked frequently upon. Then Shaykh Al-Fawzan explains, and ibadah is of two categories. This word ibadah, worship and servitude, is of two categories. The first category is ibadatun amma li jami'il khalq, Servitude which is general to the whole of the creation. That's the first category of ibadah. Servitude, which is general to all of the creation. None of the creation escape this servitude. Servitude which is general to the whole of the creation. All of them are ibadullah, slaves of Allah. The believer and the disbeliever. The evildoer and the hypocrite. All of them are ibadullah, slaves to Allah. Meaning that they are under His control and His overwhelming power. And that it is obligatory upon them to worship Him, He the Perfect and Most High. This ibadah, this servitude, is general to the whole of the creation. Their believers and their disbelievers. All of them are called ibadullah. All of them are called slaves of Allah. Meaning that they are creatures created by Him, in submission to Him. No one from them can escape His grasp and His sovereignty. Just as He the Most High said, إن كل من في السماوات والأرض إلا آتي الرحمن عبدا. Surah Maryam, the 19th Surah, Ayah 93, with the explanation, all those in the heavens and the earth will come to the Most Merciful on the Day of Resurrection as a slave. Sheikh Al-Fawzan said, this covers everyone who is in the heavens and the earth, the believer and the disbeliever. All of them will come on the Day of Resurrection in submission to Allah, the Perfect and Most High. None of them has any share along with Allah, the Perfect and Most High, in His sovereignty, in His mulk. So that's the first type of ibadah, servitude, which is general for all the creation. Then Sheikh Fawzan mentions the second category. He said, the second category, ubudiyatun khassa bil mu'minin, is worship and servitude particular to the believers. Just as He the Most High said, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. Surah Al-Furqan, 25th Surah, Ayah 63, with the explanation, and the servants of the Most Merciful are those who walk upon the earth in humility. And the Shaykh Al-Fawzan continues to give further ayahs with this second meaning. So it's important that we always distinguish between these two meanings when we see an ayah for the light. What is the meaning of the ubudiyah here? The servitude which is general to the whole creation, or the particular servitude, the willing servitude of the believers. So then he mentions a second evidence with regard to this particular worship particular to the believers, the servitude and worship particular to the believers. He said, He the Most High said, Inna ibadi laysa laka alayhim sultan. Surah Al-Hijr, the 15th Surah, Ayah 42, with the explanation, you have no authority over my servants. The ayah where it's being quoted what Allah the Most High said to Iblis, with the explanation, you have no authority over my ibad, over my servants. Then the Shaykh said, Satan said, إِلَّا عِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصِينَ. Surah Al-Hijr, Surah 15, Ayah 40. Same Surah, 2 ayahs before, Ayah 40, with the explanation, except for your chosen servants from them. Sheikh Fawzan said, this is ubudiyatun khassa. This is particular and specific servitude. And it is the servitude of ta'ah, of obedience, and of at-taqarrub, drawing closer to Allah by means of tawheed. Then the Shaykh said, and al-ibadah, worship in the legislation. So now he gives the definition in the Islamic legislation. What is meant by ibadah? What's meant by this term? He said the scholars have differed with regard to its definition. meaning. They have differed with regard to the wordings which they use to define it. But the meaning is one. When he says the scholars have differed, they haven't disagreed about the meaning of ibadah. They've just differed in the wording which they use to explain it. Whereas the meaning of what they're saying is one and the same meaning, even though they use different terms. He said, so from them were those who say, al-ibadatu ghayatu dhulli ma'a ghayat al-hubb. Some of them define ibadah to be al-ibadah ghayatu dhulli ma'a ghayat al-hubb, the utmost humble submission along with the utmost love. Shaykh said, he mentions who defined it this way. He said, as was said by Ibn al-Qayyim in An-Nuniyya, his famous poem, An-Nuniyya. وَعِبَادَةُ الرَّحْمَنِ غَايَةُ حُبِّهِ مَعَ ذُلِّ عَابِدِهِ هُمَا قُطْبَانِ. هُمَا قُطْبَانِ. The line of poetry with the explanation, and worship of the most merciful one is to have the utmost love of him, along with humble submission of his servant. They are the two pivots. So therefore he defined it as being having the utmost love along with the utmost humility, or along with the utmost humble submission. So that's the first definition. Then he mentioned, and from them are those who say, al-ibadatu hiya ma umira bihi shar'an min ghayri itradin urfi wal iqtida'in aqli. And from them are those who say it means worship is that which is commanded in the revealed legislation, not on account of its being something conforming to custom, nor something necessitated by the intellect. Sheikh Al-Fawzan said, because worship, ibadah, is tawqifiyya. It can only be affirmed with text. It is not established through the intellect, nor through customs. Rather, it is only established through the legislation. And this is a correct definition. However, the fully comprehensive definition, the two definitions that have just preceded, they're correct. He said, however, the fully comprehensive definition, which is exclusive, which is exclusive of that which is not from worship. So he said, however, the fully comprehensive and exclusive definition is that which Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah defined it with in his saying, al-ibadatu ismun jami'un li kulli ma yuhibbuhu Allahu min al-aqwali wal-a'mali adh-dhahirati wal-batinah. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah defined ibadah, worship, to be, he said, worship is a comprehensive term covering everything which Allah loves, from sayings and actions, the outward and the inward. Sheikh Fawzan said, this is the comprehensive, exclusive definition, and it is that worship is a noun covering everything which Allah has commanded. Sheikh Fawzan said, so doing whatever Allah has commanded in obedience to Allah, and leaving whatever Allah has forbidden in obedience to Allah, this is ibadah, this is worship. And its types cannot be enumerated. Its types are so many that they cannot be counted, enumerated. Its types are many. Everything which Allah has commanded is ibadah, is worship. And every case of leaving something which Allah has forbidden in obedience to Allah is worship. And its types cannot be enumerated. Its types are many. Everything which Allah has commanded is ibadah, is worship. And everything which Allah has forbidden, and leaving it is, leaving that thing is worship. Whether it is something outward upon the limbs or something inward in the hearts, it is worship. Because worship can be upon the tongue, and it can be within the heart, and it can be upon the limbs. Then the Shaykh gives examples of each of these. He said, it can be upon the tongue, such as at tasbih, saying Subhanallah, and remembrance, at dhikr, remembrance of Allah, and at tahleel, saying La ilaha illallah, and stating the 2 declarations of faith. All the legislated statements of the tongue from the remembrance of Allah are ibadah, are worship. And likewise, everything which is within the heart, from that which draws a person closer to Allah, the Mighty and Majestic, then it is ibadah, it is worship, such as al-khawf, fear, and al-raja, hope, and al-khashya, awe, and al-raghba, fervent desire, and al-rahba, dread, and al-tawakkul, trust and reliance, and al-inaba, turning repentantly, and al-isti'ana, seeking aid. All of these are actions of the heart. Turning for refuge to Allah with the heart, and having khashya, having awe of Allah, and fearing Him, and having fervent desire for Him, and loving Him, having mahabba, having love of Him, He the Perfect, and al-ikhlas lahu, making one's actions purely and sincerely for Him, and al-niyatul sadiqah, and having intention which is true and sincere for Allah, the Mighty and Majestic. Everything in the hearts from these types is ibadah, is worship. And likewise, worship can be upon the limbs, such as the ruku, the bowing in the prayer, and the sujood, prostration, and jihad in Allah's cause, and striving jihad with one's person, and al-hijrah, migration. All of these are acts of worship of the body. And fasting, as-siyam, fasting, is an act of worship of the body. It is apparent upon the limbs. So therefore worship can be upon the tongue, and in the heart, and upon the limbs. Then the Shaykh said, he gives another way to break it down. He said, then ibadah, worship, is divided into ibadah badaniya, acts of worship performed bodily, and ibadah maliyya, acts of worship performed through the giving of wealth. And acts of worship which you actually perform, which you do with your body, and acts of worship which you perform by giving wealth. Then he explains these two. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Al-ibadatul badaniyya, bodily acts of worship. They are the 3 types which we have said. They can be upon the tongue, and upon the limbs, and in the heart. And it can be, worship can be maliyya, acts of worship performed through the giving of wealth, such as giving the zakat, and such as spending in Allah's cause. And it is spending in jihad. Allah the Most High said, وَجَاهِدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَجَاهَدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ. Surah At-Tawbah, the 9th Surah, Ayah 20. وَجَاهَدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ. Surah At-Tawbah, the 9th Surah, Ayah 20, with the description of the believers, that they strive in Allah's cause with their wealth and their persons. They fight jihad and they strive in Allah's cause with their wealth and their persons. Sheikh Fawzan said, he placed wealth before the persons. I mean, they're striving with their wealth. He mentioned that before, the striving with their actual self, bodily. He said wealth, he gave precedence to the wealth over the persons. So jihad by means of wealth is ibadatun maliyah, is an act of worship involving the giving of wealth. And Hajj, the pilgrimage, is composed of an act of worship involving the body and an act of worship involving giving of wealth. So carrying out the rites, the manasik, carrying out the rites, the tawaf and the sa'i and the Ramiul Jimar, they're casting pebbles in the place of casting pebbles, and standing in Arafah and spending the night in Muzdalifah. These are ibadah badaniyah. These are acts of worship involving the body. And as for the spending on your Hajj, then it is ibadatun maliyah, an act of worship involving giving wealth, because Hajj requires spending. Walhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala Muhammad. And we'll leave what continues, and you may notice the continuation of the text here is a repetition of the line which just preceded before here. And we'll leave what follows till next time, In Shaa Allah. And that will be after Ramadan, In Shaa Allah. As for the Monday, because the conference and the like, and the link-ups with the sheikhs, and the lectures of Sheikh Falah, Hafidhullah, and the lectures that will be received, inshallah, will mean, and being followed by Ramadan, means the next, with regard to Monday and Thursday lessons, the next Monday or Thursday lesson will be after Ramadan, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala Muhammad, wa subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.